I just finished watching Marvel Zombies and I'm not afraid to say it's absolutely peak. We have Blade absolutely aura farming this whole entire show, some of the best battles in all of MCU history, and finally to seeing Hulk finally get justice in an MCU project with seeing Infinity Hulk. And when I saw this Infinity Hulk, I literally jumped out of my seat. As a Hulk fan, I used to pray for times like this when Hulk would be completely unstoppable. And in the show, it would take a literal army of gods powered up by the powers of Scarlet Witch to even stand a chance against this version of the Hulk. And going into the show, I did not expect it to be as good as it was, since this show was made by the same people who made the What If show. And after What If season 1, it kind of fell off when it came to interesting ideas, since we were getting beyond mid episodes in season 2 and season 3, with episodes like Howard the Duck getting married and Agatha going to Hollywood. And yes, those are real episodes, I did not make them up. And it also didn't help that the What If show eventually became the Captain Carter show, with her having 7 episodes in the What If show. But all the potential that the Marvel What If show could have had all went into Marvel Zombies, and boy does it show, since not only does the writing for the show feel way much better than a lot of the What If episodes, but they're also not afraid to take risk with Marvel Zombies. Like, they even made the show R-rated, and it's definitely not a soft R rating, since they're definitely not holding back with some of these deaths. Since one of my main issues with Marvel's What If is that they're always too afraid to use interesting What If stories and change fan favorite characters in any drastic ways. Like in season 3, we only got 1 episode with original Avengers and no notable What If stories that would change iconic characters. While in Marvel Zombies, they're not afraid to take these risks with some of their biggest Marvel heroes, because we see some brand new takes on beloved Marvel heroes that What If was always afraid to do. Like, we got to see a version of Thor where when he failed to kill Thanos, he didn't become a Fortnite player, but instead became a mute god who would drown himself in parties and never really participated in battle with the rest of his life. Or seeing a version of Hulk where instead of breaking his arm when he uses the Infinity Stones, he instead is strong enough to hold all the powers of the Infinity Stones inside of him to save the world from its power. Which Marvel's What If never really took these risks on changing these iconic characters status quo. They're too busy changing characters like Agatha Harkness and Happy Hogan. And not to mention, Marvel Zombies brought in some heroes we all wanted to see, with characters like Blade, who has the powers of Moon Knight, which is such an interesting take, and it looks so cool on screen when he uses his Moon Knight powers. And seeing Spider-Man really not hold back in this show because all of his enemies are zombies and he can fully go all out. And finally, also seeing a version of Scarlet Witch who lives up to being one of the strongest Marvel characters in all of the MCU. And I still haven't even mentioned how this show is also adapting the iconic Marvel zombie story, and making a lot of hero zombies in this show actually works out pretty well, since we finally get to see our fan favorite heroes go all out in battles, because we usually don't see these heroes go all out in other shows, and seeing fights that we usually wouldn't see, like seeing fights with Black Panther and Spider-Man team up to fight Thanos, or seeing battles like Captain Marvel versus the strongest Eternal known as Ikaris, or Blade versus Ghost, which is super amazing on how Blade uses his senses to detect ghosts, and is Blade's first fight and shows perfectly how Blade fights in this show. And to finally getting one of the best battles, and a battle that we've been waiting for a long time, we get to see a true battle to the death with Thor versus Hulk, which is an episode What If should have done a long time ago, where we finally get to see Hulk versus Thor go all out, but instead we get to see in a Marvel Zombie show out of all things. Like, Marvel Zombies really shows that What If was really holding back, where we see a zombie Thor powered up by the powers of Scarlet Witch and Hulk with the power in the Infinity Stones, and they go all out. And it's just a great fight, and it's super well animated. Not to mention, we finally get to see who really wins in this fight when they're going all out. And some of these impact frames are absolutely insane when they're fighting, because, you know, these are the strongest Avengers. And even though I'm glazing this fight, I do think that what makes this fight so good is the build up to this amazing finale, since I think Marvel Zombies picked a really good cast to follow through this Marvel Zombie story, since our main cast is really just Kamala Khan, Shang-Chi, Blade, and finally Scarlet Witch being the main villain. And the whole show is a spin-off from the original What If Marvel Zombie story, but they do it way better in this show, with Marvel Zombies already being pretty deep into the zombie apocalypse, while in the What If episode, the zombie apocalypse is just barely starting. And you really don't need to see the original What If Marvel Zombies episode to understand this new Marvel Zombies miniseries. But to give you a brief summary of how the show plays out, we follow the main character of Kamala Khan teamed up with Ironheart and Kate Bishop Hawkeye as they find a transmitter from a Quinjet that they can use to contact the Nova Force, and the Nova Force might have a way to solve the zombie cure. But Kamala Khan loses Kate Bishop and Ironheart through a horde of zombies and gets saved by Blade. And throughout the show, she's on a mission to find a spaceship to contact the Nova Corps, which is kind of like a Journey to the West, Lord of the Rings type of show, where we're just traveling with the main cast to reach their objective. And throughout the show, they do a really good job of not being afraid to kill people who join Blade's and Kamala Khan's group, like they kill Red Guardian and Elena, two popular characters in the Thunderbolts movie. Since after all, this is a zombie show, people dying has to be part of the show, and if they didn't kill anyone, I feel like like, what would the point of it being set in the zombie apocalypse even mean if no one died? As well as they pay homages to other classic zombie shows, like they even do a Walking Dead reference with Baron Zemo playing a character similar to the governor in The Walking Dead, where Baron Zemo controls a community, but you just know he's not telling the full truth and is plotting something devious. And in the show, we get to see some cool versions of heroes becoming Marvel zombies, like seeing a Namor zombie, which is really cool because underwater zombies are just cool in general, and to having the king of all underwater zombies just makes it super cool to see on screen. And in the show, we get to see a lot of references to iconic Marvel moments in the MCU, but with giving a slight twist with making it Marvel zombies, like seeing Thanos come to Earth to get all the Infinity Stones, but instead in this version he's a zombie, and to seeing how Shang-Chi's backstory would change by if the zombie apocalypse happened in his movie and he gets the 10 rings early on in his movie. And I also think they did a lot of justice to this version of Scarlet Witch in this Marvel zombie show, where throughout the show we see Scarlet Witch be an absolute villain, where she's controlling zombies and hunts down the main cast of Kamala Khan and the rest of her crew throughout her journey to find her spaceship. And we really get to see how evil she can be in a show. While in the main MCU, I always thought they were always too afraid to make Scarlet Witch unapologetically evil, since they were really trying to make her sympathetic in a way, but in this show she's really out for blood and she's just manipulating everyone as a means to an end, which ultimately leads to Kamala Khan and her group and Scarlet Witch finally meeting up in an epic final battle, after Kamala Khan finds out that the Noble Force can't save them and they have to save themselves by defeating Scarlet Witch and stopping her from absorbing Infinity Hulk's power, since if Hulk stops holding the power of the destroyed Infinity Stones, the world would be doomed. And it leads into this amazing animated battle of just some of the most amazing shots in all of the MCU animation that I wish that the original What If show did, where we see Blade cutting Ant-Man in half in slow motion and seeing Blade chop through a whole army of zombies, and Blade is just pretty good throughout this whole entire show. He has some of the best action scenes in this show, as well as seeing Shang-Chi get good fights and using his 10 rings in pretty dynamic ways. And finally seeing this iconic scene that we've seen throughout the trailers, where we see Spider-Man ripping off a bunch of zombies' heads that a lot of people were mentioning when the trailer first came out. But obviously the best part was indeed Infinity's Hulk fight, where Scarlet Witch sends an army of Asgardian gods to fight this version of the Hulk. And even though Scarlet Witch sent an army of Asgardian gods who are now zombies and superheroes who are now zombies, Hulk just defeats them pretty easily. Like, just the shockwaves of his punches is what defeats all of these zombies. Like, not even the physical punches, just the shockwave of this version of Hulk's punches is taking down waves of Asgardian gods. And even when this Hulk gets injured, he just has some insane regeneration. And finally, the best part of Infinity Hulk, like I mentioned earlier in this video, is where we get to see one of the best fights of this show, where we get to see a zombie Thor powered up by the powers of Scarlet Witch face off in an ultimate death match against this Infinity Hulk, which is just amazing to see the two strongest Marvel characters going at it with insane power blows, and is a fight for the ages when it comes to Marvel animation. And I suggest all of you guys go watch this fight, since I can't do it justice by just explaining it. But at the end of this amazing fight, after they go blow for blow, we do get to see my goat Hulk come out on top. But since this Infinity Hulk is tired out from fighting hordes of zombies and fighting this version of Thor, Scarlet Witch just kills all of Kamala Khan's team, even Blade, which was pretty surprising to me that they'll kill off Blade in this show. And then Scarlet Witch speed blitz the Hulk to steal the Infinity Stone's power once and for all. And this Marvel Zombie show ultimately has Scarlet Witch winning in the end, which I think is probably the best ending they could have done, where we get to see Scarlet Witch win in the end, since this is an alternative timeline where anything can happen, and they were definitely not afraid to take this risk. Now, it is kind of vague on if Scarlet Witch ends up blowing the world or just has zombies completely taking over Earth, or maybe something else. It's kind of really up in the air how this show ends, since it leaves off in a cliffhanger where Kamala Khan is joining Scarlet Witch and is trapped in this fantasy world where she lives her best life. Since it might seem like they might continue this story later on, but I personally would just be fine if they left the show where it's at, since I don't think they can do too much more with this Marvel Zombie show unless the Marvel Zombie virus goes beyond Earth and onto other planets, which would be kind of cool, where we get to see like the Guardians get taken over, or we get to see the Nova Corps get taken over. But I don't know how interesting that would be, since most of the Marvel characters are kind of dead at this point. But overall, I think Marvel Zombies lived up to the potential and hype that a lot of people had for the show, and even far exceeded my personal expectations. While if we look at Marvel's What If show, it kind of failed to live up to the expectations, since it just started telling stories that a lot of people weren't interested in, and it didn't help that it eventually became the Captain Carter show instead of the episodic story that a lot of people found interesting in the first place in season 1. And I personally would love to see more What If episodes get this Marvel Zombies treatment, where we see a What If story get told in a longer form and go more in depth in a What If story. Like, they can definitely use some interesting ideas that they showed at the end of What If, where they tease certain stories, like what if Ghost Rider was a samurai, or like a What If story that a lot of people always talk about, what if the other half got snapped by Thanos. What if stories like that would definitely be so cool to see see get this Marvel Zombies treatment. But let me know your thoughts on some what if stories that you haven't seen yet that you wish could get this Marvel Zombies treatment. And also let me know, are you planning to watch this show or have you already watched it? Let me know down in the comments what you guys think of Marvel Zombies. Personally, I loved it, and I hope all of you guys go watch it because it's really good. But I hope you guys enjoy this video. Hope to see you guys next time. Later. Peace.